welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Ukraine has taken the key international commitments on gender equality. The program, called Equality Policy of Ukraine 2030, appears in a completely new perspective. So how does the new gender policy affect the development of Ukraine? To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Sergeeva. She's a founder of the NGO Transparent Choice and human rights activist. Hello, and thank you for joining. So, as you have told me earlier, you have presented your NGO within and the program, which is called New Gender Policy of Ukraine, lately. What is this program, and what positive effect can it cause on Ukraine in the nearest future?
This program about the new gender policy till 2030 was developed for Ukraine. It was developed by our partner NGO White Ribbon Ukraine, and because of our similar statute values, it was decided that I take part in this in the development of this agenda, and we work together on it. So today was a public discussion, the third public discussion of with experts in the sphere about this agenda. So this agenda is a consistent and total complete program, I would say, that could positively affect the situation with the gender policy in Ukraine.
So basically, by the year 2030, according to this program, if it's fully implemented, what's Ukraine going to be like?
Well, so the vision of this program is that there are equal rights for men and women, and that there is women's leadership is developed, and women are taking active part in the political, economic, and social life of the country. That the other point is that there are equal opportunities for women to have business in the country, to conduct business, and this will lead to the economic growth in Ukraine. It will, by the statistics provided by experts in the sphere, they say that Ukrainian GDP could rise by 30%, which is $30 billion. So that's what's expected by year to 2030 if women participate as equally as men in all these processes. Another point is protecting women, protecting childhood, protecting maternity programs, because at this moment, unfortunately, the situation is far from perfect in Ukraine. The legislative system is imperfect, and thus we have a very bad situation with the demography, because women, they do not feel protected, though they don't and they don't want to give birth, because so it's like a cycle. Also, we want to change the system of budgeting. We want it to be 50 and 50, so 50 should go on gender issues from the national level, from the national budget, and 50 should go from the local budget. Also, we want to go away from those stereotypes that have formed back from the years that women should only sit at home, that women cannot take part in the active social life, and women, unfortunately, now they have two jobs basically. They work they work a daytime at a regular job like we do, then we come back home and we have to cook, wash dishes, and look after kids. And in this respect, I really like the programs, the information campaigns held by the Ministry of Social Politics of Ukraine, that it's easier to do it in four hands, meaning that men should participate in all those housekeeping processes, and it's in very simple language. Men and women are taught that you should do it together. That's how it is in Europe, you know, equal participation. So this is important.
This is all results you're talking about, and they're very impressive. They're very ambitious, and they're very desirable, I would say. However, how do we implement all that? What's the process behind the result?
Yes, it's not a process of one day, of course, and it has to be a complex of decisions implemented at the government level. What is very important that the whole society participates in these processes. So it has to be the government sector participation, like ministries and all the organizations which are in these processes. It has to be the non-government sector. It has to be the also partners from abroad, so that this process is not, like only seen from one side. And it's not a one-year process. So it has to be a complex of these solutions. One of them, as I mentioned, it has to be an informational sector has to be improved. So we have to launch solid information campaigns for people saying that this is not right, women have the right to do this and that, and we should stimulate them. We should work both on women, especially it is, like in cities, the situation is a bit more different. In the rural area, unfortunately, the situation is much worse, and the level of participation of women in the social and economic and political life is much less. We have to talk about countering domestic violence, because it is also one thing of gender inequality. We have to talk about stimulating the demographic situation. We have to talk also about new trends and new implementation policies from Europe, which we have to implement. So besides that, that's the informational sector. Of course, it starts with the legislative system. It's very important. It's a obligatory part. So we already have positive movements in this area. For instance, I was taking part in the social advocacy for alimony laws and for the countering of domestic violence law. So we have to change the legislation. For example, we have to change the legislation about work issues and stimulate companies to give leaves to look after the babies, for women, because now the companies really try not to do this, because they're obviously losing from this. So that's one thing we have to choose also to change also the politics. What is also important is to involve women on higher economic and political level. For example, now only 12% of women in Verkhovna Rada, which is, is still
Comparing to other European countries, how visible, how bad is the problem of gender inequalities in Ukraine?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's a drastic problem, a dramatic problem. The situation for sure is improving through the years, and there is this yearly gender gap, gender equality gap index developed by the Economic Forum. And in year 2000, I think we're on the 61st place. So we're rising each year, but it's not going as fast as in other European countries. For instance, coming back to the political situation, comparing, for example, to Europe, usually it's 15% in higher legislative bodies, the percentage of women participation. And it's in such countries as Sweden and progressive countries, the percentage can go up to 40% even of women participation in such processes.
What should we aim for in Ukraine?
Well,
50? Even more?
I do not stand for very feministic or radical movements. I vote for equality of rights. I vote for participation of all genders, participation of all ages, of all social groups. I think there has to be a balance in everything. Our aim is to give this possibility to women and to all vulnerable groups, to everyone who needs right protection, to give them this chance to participate actively actively in the social, economic, and political life. That's what I think we should do. And now is a good period of time because the elections are coming soon, and politicians see these movements and they try to engage women more in their political campaigns, because they understand that they have to engage them in order to be successful, because 53–54% of women we have, even more comparing to men. So even the election election sector analyzed. So that's what we have to aim for protection.
This is a great deal of a job you're doing now. You are a founder of an NGO. What else does your NGO do to settle the issues of gender inequality in Ukraine?
I'm a lawyer initially. I was working in the sphere of law for many years. I did private practice. I worked for the government. I was working in Верховна Rada. So I have experience in legislation, law drafting, and in the Ministry of Justice. I was launching this project, I Have a Right. I'm sure you heard about it.
Yes,
I think it's a very great thing. It's one of the good examples of how government, together with the NGO sector, can work for rights protection. So that's what I'm basically trying to implement now through my NGO. And as the main spheres of interest, I see the statute values are rights protection. I see advocacy, social advocacy of legislation, social lobbying of legislative changes, because I have good experience in this, and I can see how positive it can be for the government and for the country as a whole. Also, I go for a realization of different social rights protection projects together with international partners, together with other NGOs, and that's why I'm very open for cooperation, and because I think this is a key point to success, when the NGO sector unites and we get ideas from each other and from the government, from other stakeholders. So,
well, thank you so much for what you're doing. You're doing a very important job, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That was Yulia Sergeeva. She's the founder of the NGO Transparent Choice and human rights activist. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV for more.